You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, part of the 90 Min Football Network. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this edition, we're going to be discussing the links between Arsenal and Napoli midfielder Fabian Ruiz. Now, I'm well aware that a few rumours here and there don't necessarily mean that the player is on his way to Arsenal, but he's someone that we've been linked with before, somebody that we've talked about in the past. And I just wanted to share my thoughts as well as gauging your views and opinions from the chat on whether Fabian Ruiz would be a good fit for Mikel Arteta's side, for Mikel Arteta's system. So we're going to be getting into that on this show. We're also going to be rounding up the weekend's Premier League action. We'll be discussing some of the games. We'll be running through the results, and we'll be talking about the implications that they have on, of course, the mighty Arsenal. Big hello to everybody joining us in the live chat. Hope you're all well. Hope you're all good. Hope you had a good weekend. Thank you to those of you who tuned in a little bit earlier on Monday for the YouTube viewers to check out the reaction to Jack Wilshere's departure and signing for Aarhus in Denmark. So thank you. If you haven't already checked it out, please do go back and give it a view, give it a like. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, what on earth are you waiting for? We hit 19k subs last night, which is amazing. We're en route towards 20,000. Want to get there by the end of the season. So help us if you haven't done so already by clicking on that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and that way you'll never miss a show. If you're, of course, listening to us via audio platforms, we love you too. Make sure you've left us a review on whatever platform it is that you download the shows from. Right. Okay. Let's get into it. Let's talk Fabian Ruiz. Okay. So I'm a big lover of Serie A. And you guys know that he's a player I've seen a lot of over the last couple of seasons. And so I wanted to really spend some time on this. I know I said it right at the top of the show. I know that we aren't particularly close to signing Fabian Ruiz, but those links have re-emerged, having been pretty prevalent sort of maybe a year, 18 months ago. And so I wanted to give my thoughts on how Fabian Ruiz would fit in, if he would fit in, what are his strengths, what are his weaknesses. And I think this is a worthwhile conversation to have. Feel free to chip in the live chat as well, as always. But let's start off with giving you some context around this story. So multiple outlets are reporting that Fabian Ruiz's agent has hinted that he could be on the way to Arsenal, that Arsenal is an option for Fabian Ruiz, and that he could eventually join the club. Now, it's said by these various outlets that Napoli are only looking for around about £16 million plus add-ons for the midfielder. Now, why, you might ask? Well, that's because Fabian Ruiz's contract is due to expire in June 2023. It's understood that Napoli need to sell a number of players in the summer in order to balance their books. And Fabian Ruiz, given his contract situation and given the fact that there will be interest in him, you'd assume is somebody that could well be on the move. So what do I know about Fabian Ruiz? What do I see him as? I think he's got a really big physical presence in the middle of the park. I think that's something that makes him suited to Premier League football. I think he's got an absolute wand of a left foot, not afraid to shoot from the edge of the box, and very often does it successfully, in contrast to Thomas Partey, who probably couldn't score in a brothel. He's technically brilliant. He's got fantastic awareness of what's going on around him. To put it in a simpler way, he's an upgrade on Granit Xhaka. He's an upgraded version of Granit Xhaka in that he's quite physical. He has a presence on the pitch. He has the ability to play brilliant passes at times and technically looks very, very sound. But I just think he's at a higher level in a lot of the kind of metrics if you were to sit and analyze the two players. He's got wonderful vision. He's got a really deft touch as well, which is always brilliant to see. He's a joy to watch. If I had one reservation, however, about Fabian Ruiz, it would be that the pace of the Premier League, and I know seems like a bit of a cliche and everybody says it, the pace of the Premier League is so different to that in Serie A. I wonder if, just like Granit Xhaka, he looks really comfortable in a league where the tempo is a little bit slower. And if he was to come to the Premier League, would we start to say some of the same things? I think that could be, that could ring true. I really do. Look, I think he's a better striker of the ball. I think he's a better passer of the ball. I think his vision is better. I think his awareness is better. I think that he gives you so much. But I do have this nagging kind of voice in the back of my head telling me that, yeah, he does look good and he does look great in those areas. But with Fabian Ruiz, if he was to come to the Premier League, we'd see a lot of the same issues that we see with Granit Xhaka in terms of him maybe being a little bit slow to a challenge, in terms of him being a little bit late into challenges, just because he's not as mobile as some. But the lack of mobility is sometimes what you get when you go for players with a huge physical presence, with a big stature. It's not often that you see guys who are, as tall as Fabian Ruiz is, 189 centimeters tall, who are absolutely rapid across the ground. I think one of the other positives about Fabian Ruiz is that he can quite comfortably play in any of the central midfield positions, whether that be a defensive midfielder, a centre midfielder, attacking midfielder. He's even at times played slightly to the left of Napoli's midfield as well. So those are positives that I would say are, quite clear when it comes to Fabian Ruiz. But my one reservation is the lack of mobility. Is that going to be something that we notice a lot more if he was to play in the Premier League, as opposed to what we see now when we watch him go out on the pitch for Napoli in Serie A? I don't know. Let's have a quick look at Fabian Ruiz's, some of his stats, some of the facts and figures around him and his career so far. We'll look at some heat maps. So Fabian Ruiz, of course, as I mentioned, 25-year-old Spanish midfielder. According to sofascore.com, his valuation currently stands at around about 53 million euros, which is around about 44 million pounds. Now, when you consider that his contract is due to expire in June 2023, as previously mentioned, the fact that he could be available for 16 million pounds plus add-ons, to me, makes this an opportunity that, if it is really there, if it does really present itself, that you can't possibly overlook or pass up. I think it's one of those where it just screams at me, this is a great deal. If the opportunity is there to do it. Make sure it happens. Look at his heat map. He covers all sorts of ground. He's all over the pitch, which is fantastic. And if we just take it a little bit further on, we're talking about a guy who's played 20 games in the Serie A this season, started 19 of them, averages 81 minutes per game. He's been in the SofaScore Team of the Week 4 times this season, 5 goals. He's contributed 5 goals. Now, that's way more than you get out of Granit Xhaka. That's way more than you get out of Thomas Partey. And we've been talking a lot, haven't we, lately, about the fact that where are the goals going to come from? And I keep saying it's really important that we share them out. It's really important that we're not overly reliant on one centre forward, that we are spreading the goals around the team. And Fabian Ruiz is someone who clearly can contribute in that sense. He's also provided 3 assists. So that's 8 direct goal contributions in 20 Serie A games this season. That's pretty good going for a central midfielder. So yeah, I'd be quite up for it. I'd think that this is a good and smart move, and the kind of move that I'd back if the club were to make it. I think the fact that we're talking about potentially getting this done for something like 16 million pounds plus add-ons, which is what the reports are saying. And again, look, I don't take it as gospel. I know full well that there are a lot of reports doing the rounds all the time, and many of which are inaccurate. But if this was the case, even if it was double that, even if we were talking about 32 million pounds for Fabian Ruiz, I think that would be something that would still appeal to me. You're talking about a 25-year-old midfielder. We keep talking about this, project youth at Arsenal, but Edu has made the point, and I think a lot of fans have made the point that, we could do with bringing in some ready-made players and some experienced players and some senior players to complement these youngsters and to help them grow and develop into the best that they can be. So I think it's important that we start to find that balance. And I think, and this is just a feeling, I think that come the summer, we'll start to see that shift a little bit in Arsenal's transfer policy and in Arsenal's transfer approach. Let's take some of your thoughts from the live chat on Fabian Ruiz, because I think it would be good to just gauge where you guys are at in terms of your feelings on this. We've got Vin XYZ14 who says, what's the point in discussing something that is not and will not happen? Fabian Ruiz will not move for Arsenal. He says you can't buy a player who is not for sale or who doesn't want to move to your club, with all due respect. He also goes on to say Fabian Ruiz wishes to move to a top club after Napoli, not to Arsenal. Again, with all due respect. Listen, we are a top club. And if we get back in the Champions League, the landscape changes. And it changes dramatically. It really, really does. Don't say that we're not a top club, because we're a huge club. We're not performing at the level that we want to be at just yet. But if we got back in the Champions League, Arsenal would be back where they belong. And I'll tell you what, Arsenal would be in a very, very strong position to push on again and get back to that top table. I really do believe that, because we're building the right foundations. We're building the right structure. And there's no reason why with Champions League football and the additional finance that comes with that, we can't attract players the likes of Fabian Ruiz. You know, there are lots of huge clubs in Italy, lots. You know, there's the two Milan clubs. There's Juve, there's Napoli, there's Lazio, there's Roma, there's Fiorentina. There's so many top clubs in Italy, but the finance isn't there. And unfortunately, and I love Serie A. I watch it all the time. I do a lot of work around it. It's, you know, I always say this, if I wasn't an Arsenal fan, I'd probably spend a lot more time watching Serie A than I do the Premier League. But money does talk. And there is a distinct lack of it in the Serie A at the moment. Premier League clubs, and as unfair as this might sound, do have the capability of going in to clubs like that and blowing them out of the water with offers. Fabian Ruiz, rumored to be earning around about 45,000 a week. Arsenal could easily double that and not even bat an eyelid. Money does talk. And if Arsenal are back in the Champions League, their financial superiority in comparison to the Serie A clubs, as well as the additional finance that comes with being in the Champions League, could be a game changer. I really do believe that. Let's see what else we've got. GB says there should have been an undecided option for the Fabian Ruiz poll. My fear is that he's a slow or slower than Xhaka and won't be the same in the EPL. I make him the 11th best player in Serie A this season. That's very specific. And it's a concern that I express too. I'm not 100% sure that he translates that skill set in an effective way to the Premier League just because of that lack of mobility. And I do think that if you're one of these people who has a major issue with that side of Granit Xhaka's game, you can't really be on board with the idea of signing Fabian Ruiz, who, as I said, I believe is technically at a higher level, but has a lot of the same, I would say, shortcomings. Dave R says, hi, Harry. Hope all's good across the pond. Is he the right fit for Arsenal? I think he's got a lot of qualities, Dave, but I'm not 100% sure that he's the right fit for the style that we're seeing Arsenal sort of shift towards. I think that he'd be a great addition to the squad. I think sitting in a two-man midfield pivot, I think he's brilliant, and I think he'd fit right in. And that's why at the beginning of the season, I was kind of saying, well, if that's the way we're going to play, then actually Granit Xhaka's not a bad option. And actually, if we couldn't go out and find someone better, then we should probably keep hold of him. Now, what we've seen as the season's gone on is we've seen a bit of a shift. And I'll just bring up from yesterday's show, Arsenal's average positions versus Brentford. And you have a look at that, and you look at Granit Xhaka, who's wearing the number 34 there. You look at his position. It's not as a deep-lying midfield playmaker, which is what I believe Fabian Ruiz is. It's playing a much more advanced role, particularly in games against the likes of Brentford, where you're at home and you're expected to dictate the play. Does Fabian Ruiz fit in there? To a degree, he does, because he's got that technical ability that when he does get in and around the final third, he can make things happen. But to be able to press, to be able to follow through on certain things that Mikel Arteta is clearly demanding at the moment, you need to have a certain skill set. And I'm not 100% sure that Fabian Ruiz is the perfect fit. But maybe Arsenal will feel it's worth it if he is indeed available for the price being touted. Big hello to Kasirye, who joins us from Uganda and says, much love to you, Harry, and to you guys, man. Everyone out in Uganda, hope you're all well. And great to see so many people on the stream from all different parts of the world. Big hello to everybody else joining us too. Okay, let's see. Gid32 says, if he is better than Granit, then we should consider getting him. But finding cover for that position is not as easy as most Arsenal fans think it is. Deep-lying playmakers will not get you more than 5 goals a season, Harry. But that's the point, Gid. I'm not expecting my deep-lying playmaker to get me more than 5 goals a season. But we're not getting 5 goals a season out of Thomas Partey or out of Granit Xhaka. So 5 goals from a deep-lying playmaker actually looks pretty good. Even 3, 4 in the league. We're not getting anywhere near that from Xhaka or from Partey. So this is why in this particular metric and in this particular discussion, Fabian Ruiz is obviously, much sort of more appealing in that sense, I would say. Okay, let's see what else we've got in the chat box. Michael says, Savic at Lazio for me is a better target than Ruiz to replace Xhaka. Yeah, I don't disagree. I think he's a good option as well. I don't think he's a good option. Sorry, I do think he's a good option. Sam says that he seems like a similar player to Saul, who had a great relationship with Partey and at Atletico. In some ways, I get what you mean. I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from. I'm not sure that they're too comparable, though. I think there are a lot of differences. I think Saul has got that, or did have, that mobility that maybe Fabian Ruiz and Granit Xhaka miss. What else have we got? Vladimir says, I do also worry about his defensive nous, in addition to the pace tempo adjustment of the EPL. Let me see what else we've got in the chat box. Martin says he's not worth 32 million and not a massive upgrade on Xhaka. Don't forget, Harry, that Bissouma is available and will be cheap this summer. Yeah, I didn't say. I think he's an upgrade in some senses. I think technically he's an upgrade. But as I keep saying, I worry about other elements of his game. Okay, what else have we got? Noel says that it's a bargain, talking about the report linking him with a £16 million plus add-ons move to the Arsenal. He says if we could get him for £16 million, that would be a dream. He's worth about 50 million and he has the perfect qualities for the 4-3-3 system Arteta wants to play. So Noel, very much on that hype train. Alex says we're going to need a few more in midfield. So as well as Ruiz, who else do you want to see Arsenal bring in? I'll tell you what, I've been banging this drum since not the summer just gone. Was it the summer just gone? Yeah, since the summer. I'd quite like to see Ruben Neves come in. I really would. I think he's got so many qualities. I think he's got the experience of the Premier League. I think he's up to speed with the tempo of the Premier League. I think he's got the technical ability to really have an impact in midfield for us. I just think he's got so much going for him. And look, it's not going to be easy to prize him away from Wolves. They're a fellow Premier League club. And if they get into Europe, they'll feel like they can demand top dollar for somebody like Ruben Neves. He is at the center, the forefront of everything they do. He's a real key cog in Bruno Lage's plans moving forward. But he's the one I'd be going for. And I really do think that if you push hard enough, despite his stupid comments about the Arsenal the other week, he's somebody that you could turn his head. I really do think that. So yeah, I'd like to see Ruben Neves come in ahead of somebody like Bissouma, which won't be popular, I know. What else have we got? Akene says, Harry, what's your Twitter handle? I want to DM you something. It's there on the screen, mate, at Harry Symeou. Bottom of the screen. You'll see it there. Let's take this one from Bob. Thank you, Bob, for your very kind super chat donation. He says, I think it's the first time in a long time where I feel somewhat confident in our scouting and recruitment. Much love, Harry. Yeah, you look at what we did last summer and you have to give them some kind of look, we gave them praise, we gave them credit, but you have to give them some kind of leeway now, at least for a bit, in terms of the recruitment, because they got the summer's recruitment so very right. And it was so very right. Ramsdale's been brilliant. White has been brilliant. Tomiyasu's been sensational. You look at Nuno Tavares, who's come in as a young player, relatively low risk transfer, low fee, come in and did a really good job for the most part in Kieran Tierney's absence. And you feel confident that in Tierney's absence, we've got someone now who can come in and fill in that position. So, that was right. You look at Lokonga. I think we've seen flashes and glimpses of what Lokonga can do and how much of a bright future he has. Odegaard been another top signing. So, as I keep saying, I think what they did in the summer was so good that you almost have to back off them a little bit now and say, okay, you've earned that trust for a bit. It doesn't last very long. Nothing ever does in football. But you've got that bit of trust from us now. So we're going to back off and we're going to let you do what you think is right. And I think when January came along, there was a lot of frustration and a lot of disappointment at the fact that we didn't bring what we probably needed to bring in. But the more I think about it, and now that I look at it with a calmer head, once the window closes, there's no point in getting bogged down in transfer activity. If you get obsessed by that, if you start to let it kind of affect you once the window's closed, it's pointless because you can't do anything about it. You can't go back and reopen the window, nor can you open the window for a short period of time to suit yourself. The rule is there. It is what it is. You can only do business during certain periods. And once that period passes, it shouldn't be a talking point too much anymore. We can look ahead to future windows and we can discuss players that we think would fit in well, but there's no point crying over spilt milk. We didn't bring anybody in, and we've just got to trust that was done because Arsenal didn't want to go and overspend and overstretch themselves and overcommit to players who were not going to be fit for purpose 12 months down the line. And they didn't want to do business that would then prevent them doing their preferred business in the upcoming summer. I think that's the way Arsenal probably saw it. I think that's the way a lot of us are starting to see it now. And I think we just kind of have to give them that little bit of trust now and see what happens next summer. I really, really do. Okay, let's continue through the chat, and then we will move on to our Premier League review. Harry Fennick says, I debate you, Harry, with Ben White. He's good, but I still think 50 million when we had Saliba in the ranks isn't that smart. Look, with Ben White, and I've always said this, we had to pay an English premium. Okay, it's what happens. You go out there, you look for players, you try and take them away from a Premier League rival, and all of a sudden, the fact that Arsenal are knocking on the door and the fact that it's a fellow Premier League club, none of whom are in a perilous financial situation because of the nature of the TV deals nowadays, you have to pay over the odds. And we did have to pay over the odds for Ben White. We paid over the odds probably for Aaron Ramsdale as well. But the point here is that I still think overall it's been a positive signing. I think, 50 million at the time felt a little bit excessive. But if he goes on to be a good centre-back for Arsenal for the next 5-6 years, then that will be well worth it. The thing with Saliba, and I keep coming back to this, we've talked about it so many times over the last year or so. He obviously wasn't seen as being ready. And if you're not seen as being ready, then what's the point in hanging around the football club like a bad smell, not getting the games that you need, and your confidence in the meantime taking a beating? I think Arsenal were right if they didn't think Saliba was ready to let him go out on loan to Marseille. And if he comes back next season with a year of football, another year of football underneath his belt, and in much better form and in a good headspace and very, very confident, then Arsenal have 3 top centre-backs. What's wrong with that? So I think that we did handle the Saliba situation right. There was nothing from us to know, or there was nothing that we saw as Arsenal fans to suggest that he was ready. And so I don't think we can go too big on the club's view that he wasn't. He hasn't played a competitive game of football for Arsenal Football Club. So how can we be so sure that had he been thrown into the Premier League in the heart of Arsenal's defence, he wouldn't have made mistakes and he wouldn't have had his confidence shattered? Let's see what else we got. Michael says Neves would be perfect. Just going back to that. If we beat Wolves again, he may just see it as an upgrade. Yet at present, I don't think he does. Yeah, look, I don't think he'll ever say it publicly. I mean, why would he? He's a Wolverhampton Wanderers player. He wouldn't want to incur the wrath of his teammates, of his fans, of his manager. He would never say it. But everybody knows that Arsenal's an upgrade on Wolverhampton Wanderers. With all due respect to them, they're having a brilliant season. They're doing really well. They deserve a lot of praise and a lot of credit for that. But we're massive. I'm sorry, but we are. We're huge, and as a football club. And in comparison to Wolves, well, there is no comparison, right? So I don't think that would be an issue. I expect us to finish above Wolves come the end of the season, and I expect us to be in Europe. I expect Wolves potentially to fade away, in which case it's an opportunity for Neves to get back playing in Europe. So I think we're always an upgrade on Wolves. You know, I really do. I think this club is just on a different level to somebody like Wolves. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that, you know, from the right place in terms of, you know, my intentions in saying that. Don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't done so already. It really, really does help. Please do hit the like button on the video. Let's try and get up to 100 likes ASAP. And if you are not subscribed to the channel yet, well, what are you waiting for? Get subscribed to the Chronicles of a Gooner YouTube channel as we continue on our journey towards 20,000 subscribers. Also, if you're listening via the audio platforms, please do leave us a review. If you are listening via the audio, we're going to take a short pause for a message from our sponsors. Okay, right. Let's review the weekend's Premier League action. Lots of interesting games over the weekend, and I want to go through them just sort of one by one, some of them more briefly than others, and we'll talk a little bit about the implications on Arsenal off the back of that. Let's start with Saturday's games, and it was a game that I covered between West Ham United and Newcastle United. It finished 1-1 at the London Stadium. West Ham United took the lead through Craig Dawson, only for Arsenal old boy Joe Willock to pop up on the stroke of half-time and pull one back for Newcastle United. He leveled the score, and it stayed that way. Now, this was probably the only result this weekend that went our way. And when it went our way, being the first game of the weekend, I thought, oh, yes, we're in for a good day here again. But look, we've been spoiled in recent weeks with the way things have gone. We've been spoiled by the fact that Manchester United had dropped points of late. We've been spoiled by the fact that, you know, that Tottenham had been in a rough run of form as well. We can't ask for that every week. It's not going to happen every week. We just have to take advantage when those opportunities come along. So perhaps it was a little bit greedy of us to be sitting there thinking that all the results were going to go our way again. But this one certainly did. West Ham dropping points in a game that they probably should have won on paper against a team fighting relegation. And if you want to finish in the European places, particularly in the Champions League places, it's a game you really should be winning. Having said that, I don't think that they're the, you know, I think there'll be lots of teams that drop points against Newcastle because they're just a completely different side to the one that we saw a few months back. So, yeah, you know, West Ham are still in there or thereabouts, and we'll come on to talk about the table right at the end. But a good result for us in that sense. Obviously, Arsenal beating Brentford by 2-1 a little bit later on that day at the Emirates Stadium. Aston Villa were beaten by Watford. Roy Hodgson's side finally off the mark. Emmanuel Dennis, who's been so key for Watford this season, popped up with the goods after a delicious cross from Ismail Assar, which came in from the right-hand side. Big result that for Watford, and it just keeps their hopes alive. Brighton suffered a shock defeat at home to Burnley. Nobody saw that coming. Burnley, who have really struggled this season. Okay, they have plenty of games in hand, but they've really struggled overall. Brilliant goal from Wout Weghorst, among others. And of course, Brighton heavily beaten on their own patch. Crystal Palace, well, they held Chelsea for a very long time at Selhurst Park, but eventually Chelsea broke the deadlock and won that one by 1-0. Liverpool came from behind to defeat Norwich City by 3-1. Mo Salah on the score sheet, as was Sadio Mane, as was the new boy Luis Diaz. Look, I don't really want to praise Liverpool, but I've got to give incredible credit to Luis Diaz, because I think he looks like an absolute baller. I think he looks excellent. I think he's raw. I think he's quick. I think he's sharp. I think he's strong. I think he's intense. And he's got this technical ability as well that is just, beautiful to watch. The way he finished that goal, the ball was played through to him by Henderson, I think it was. He took a touch with his right foot and then just dinked it over the onrushing keeper with his left. Wonderful finish, wonderful goal, wonderful player, and credit to Liverpool for going out there and picking him up. We know that Tottenham were interested. It was a no-brainer for Luis Diaz, really, when the choice came about. But he's gone to Liverpool, and he played a good part at the weekend. Southampton, they beat Everton by 2-0. Frank Lampard, after a really positive start, struggling a little bit with Everton. They haven't just turned from a sort of side languishing down at the bottom of the Premier League to world beaters overnight. Not even Super Frank could pull that off. And also, of course, the big game was the one between Manchester City and Spurs. Spurs won 3-2 at Manchester City, despite being on a shit run of results going into it. And they have blown the title race wide open. We'll come on to talk about the table in just a moment. But, these are the kind of results that we're still kind of missing, as Arsenal fans. We can talk about progress. We can talk about development. We can talk about the team moving in the right direction. But we're still not quite at the point where we're able to go to places like Manchester City and get these types of results. Tottenham, they're a bit of a bogey team for Pep Guardiola's side, and they would have really, really enjoyed that victory. It's a big victory for them because it cancels out the 3 points that they lost against Wolves. They would have looked at Man City as a game in which they weren't expected to take anything from. Wolves at home, Southampton at home, they should have won those games. They didn't. So at least they've, from their perspective, the way they'll be looking at it is that they've recuperated 3 of those points they didn't expect to drop in a game that they didn't expect to get anything from. But as Arsenal fans, horrible to see. And I've got to say, watching that, I felt a little bit sick. Harry Kane was in brilliant form. And, you always feel with Tottenham that while Harry Kane and Heung-min Son are performing at a good level, that they have a chance of making that top 4. They are that good. And of course, you look at some of the additions. Dejan Kulusevski, I thought he had a really, really good game at the weekend. And of course, Rodrigo Bentancur in midfield has added some real quality to Antonio Conte's midfield pivot there. So, yeah, not great to see Spurs winning at the Etihad. Okay, let's have a look at the Premier League table before we take some of your questions. Where does this leave us? Well, this leaves Arsenal sitting in 6th place on 23 games played with 42 points on the board. We're 4 points off of Manchester United, who currently occupy 4th. But we do have 3 games in hand over both them and West Ham United. Wolves, who are 2 points behind us, they've played a game more than us. And of course, we meet them at Emirates Stadium on Thursday night. Tottenham down in 8th place, but they are just 3 points behind us. And of course, we have to travel to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So there's going to be lots of twists and turns still in this race for the top 4. Okay, let's take some of your questions from the live chat box for the remainder of the show. Make sure you drop some questions in the live chat, and I'll take as many of those as I possibly can in the next 10 to 15 minutes. Make sure you've hit the like button on the stream if you haven't done so already. There's more than enough of you watching to get us up to that 100 mark ASAP, but we're not quite there just yet. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Okay, this is a really interesting point. From Ekene. Harry, it's 1 in 6 now for Steven Gerrard. Low-key bad run of results for Aston Villa. Yeah, so I covered an Aston Villa game, not last week, the week before, in the midweek fixture against Leeds at Villa Park. And I had a good look at them. And I was quite surprised by what I saw. One of the kind of impressions I had of Steven Gerrard as a manager, and I admit that I don't watch Scottish football every week. I didn't watch Scottish football all that often when he was in charge of Rangers. But one of the maybe preconceptions, perhaps an inaccurate preconception I had of Steven Gerrard, was that his teams were first and foremost defensively watertight, organized. And I just think that of late, they've been the complete opposite to that. I think he might be struggling with the fact that he's got so many attacking players in there now. Like, for example, do you play Buendia and Coutinho together? Is that something that works? And then Ollie Watkins. I don't know. I'm not saying that it's wrong because I don't know enough about Villa to really, to be talking about this from an educated point of view or position. But is he just struggling with the balance a little bit? Because as I say, I covered them in that game against Leeds, and defensively, they were all over the shop. They really, really were. And it is a bad run for Aston Villa, and the noise around Steven Gerrard has quietened down a little bit. Yeah, you've got a point. It's a really, really good point. Okay, let's take this one from Eli, who says, who is our most important player right now? One that if we lost to injury could derail our top 4 pursuit. I think this is a great question because it's not an easy question. I think there's a few answers to this, and it might sound like I'm sitting on the fence and not wanting to commit. Maybe I'll come to a conclusion as I talk this through out loud. But I guess for me, the one that immediately jumps out is Alex Lacazette, just because we don't have another good enough centre forward, in my personal opinion. I know there'll be people who say that Martinelli can do the job. I know people have even talked about the idea of Pepe going in there and doing that job and that role. He's got to be in the conversation. I think that Gabriel and White are obviously key, because I think the drop-off in quality between those guys and Rob Holding is massive. Aaron Ramsdale is obviously key to the way we play. I think he'd be a big blow. Tomiyasu, so important at right back. Not so worried about left back anymore with Tavares coming in. Thomas Partey is massive. And he's really important when we talk about that kind of new shape system thing that we've been talking about over the last few days, where whoever the other midfielder is really bombs on and gets up almost in parallel with Martin Odegaard. So I think that Thomas Partey is really important as well. Look, there's just, with this Arsenal side, there isn't all that much strength in depth. There isn't all that much quality beyond the first 11. And so it feels like so many of those players are indispensable. So many of those players are really, really important to us. And hopefully we don't end up with any big injuries between now and the end of our campaign. Got a few different answers in the chat. Martin Odegaard is in that conversation as well, as Martin says. Moss says Gabriel and Odegaard are the most important. Shid says Xhaka is our most important player. Hate him or love him, if he's not in the team, even his haters realize that our midfield is dead. I don't disagree with you highlighting Xhaka's importance, and I think it's something that is so easily overlooked just because of the relationship he seems to have with large sections of the Arsenal fan base at the moment. So, yeah, good point. Afsar says, is the Wolves game a 6-pointer? Oh, you know what? I just feel like this is how I feel. I feel like with our games in hand, we're placing so much kind of weight on them, right? And we're sitting there going, oh, we've got these games in hand, so we're definitely in pole position. Those games in hand are not bloody easy games. You're talking about one of them being an away trip to Spurs. That ain't going to be easy. You're talking about one of them being the rearranged clash with Chelsea. That ain't going to be easy either. And then, of course, we've got Liverpool still to play at home. It just feels to me like I want to be within touching distance, or at least there or thereabouts, without the games in hand. That's why it's important that we keep up the pace for me, because with every game we win prior to those games in hand, and with every point that those around us drop, and they will drop, just like we will drop as well, you kind of, every time you win a game, you are reducing the amount of pressure and the importance of those games in hand. And I don't want to be in a place where we go into those games in hand against difficult opponents and we have to win. We might have to win them to get to where we want to be. That might be just the way it pans out. But everything we can do outside of those games, I think, is so important, because if that makes sense, it reduces the amount of pressure going into those individual games. And I do think we still have a young side, and I do think we have a side that is capable of choking. And I don't want to be in such pressure situations. Okay, going back to that question around about who's the most important player, Skipster says it's a team. Every player is important. I think so. Jid says, why do fans think where we are because of teams around us messing up and not our merit? Don't you think the league is just competitive? I think it's a bit of both, mate. I think that you can draw conclusions based on what you see from Arsenal, but you should, and I think you should take into consideration where people are in and around you. But I think there's a balance to be found. I don't think you can say it's just because of Arsenal being much, much better. And I don't think you can say it's just because of the competition around us at the moment and the level of the competition around us. I think the fairest way is to place value and weight on both of those things and to try and understand that, they are both contributing factors, never to look at one without considering the other and vice versa. JW says, how many points would you be happy with from those games in hand, and how many do you think we'll actually get? It's really tough to say, mate. Look, I think the game against Spurs is more must not lose than must win, because I would back us to do the business against the other teams. What I mean by other teams is those that we should be beating, more than I would back Spurs at this moment in time, just because I think we're better defensively. And I think when you're better defensively, you always give yourself a chance of winning football matches. So I think that one is must not lose. And anything we can take is bonus. If we can take, and this goes back to what I was saying, if we can continue to win and continue to be, at the level we've shown of late, or over the course of the season in general, then I think that the pressure on those games reduces significantly. If you're asking me about Chelsea, Spurs, and Liverpool, I'm going to say if we got 4 points from that, I'd be happy. Yeah. But we can't afford to give Spurs 3 points on us. So at least a point of those 4 needs to come against Spurs for me to be happy anyway. How many do I think we'll get? I think that's probably about right as well. Harry says, question, Harry to Harry. If we get 5th and the Europa, do you see less signings and Omari following, maybe Patino and Salah getting more game time? Or does the Champions League bring bigger signings? What do you think is the strategy? I think that we need to bring in bigger signings. It's the only way that we're going to compete today. It's the only way we're going to compete sooner rather than later. So I don't have a problem with Arsenal going out and making big signings, but being in Europe gives you the opportunity, for example, to then rotate more heavily in the cup competitions. And that then gives opportunities to Amari Hutchinson, following Balogun, Charlie Patino, Salah, etc., the players that you've mentioned. So look, I'm at a place where I want to see Arsenal compete at the highest possible level. I don't want us just to qualify for the Champions League. I want us to qualify for the Champions League, go to the knockout stages, and then have a chance like everybody else, because of the nature of the competition and the fact that it is a cup, of doing some damage and going far and enjoying the ride. So I want us to make the big signings. But, having Europa League football gives you a different opportunity in that you can give those players that you've mentioned run-outs, particularly in the group stage where you'll be coming up against sides that you should really be beating. So I think it's different. I think the Champions League requires you to be at full throttle, in which case you need a bigger and more experienced and stronger squad. Whereas with the Europa League, you can get away with dipping into the under 23s from time to time, and some of the young players knocking on the door and using them to try and get you by. So yeah, that's my view on that. Okay, I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, we're still not quite on the 100 likes mark on the live stream, so please do hit that like button and get us there ASAP. I think we're around about 20 or so away. 176 of you have voted in our live poll, which is, would you like to see Arsenal move for Fabian Ruiz in the summer? Would you like to see Arsenal move for the 25-year-old Napoli midfielder? And 82% of you say yes. I've given you my view. I've given you my thoughts. I do have some slight reservations about him, but overall, I think he's a good player, and I think he'd be a welcome addition to the squad. Okay, I'll catch you all very soon. We'll be back tomorrow with some more Arsenal content on the 5 p.m. UK stream. I'll be joined by Mike Stavru. That should be a good chat. We haven't done it for a couple of weeks just because of work getting in the way. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Check out our sponsors in the description, and we'll be back very soon. Till next time. Goodbye.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.